So, how do you save a society that's about to tear itself apart? Well, in ancient Athens, the answer came from one man. His ideas were so radical that they didn't just stop a civil war in its tracks, they actually laid the very foundation for democracy itself. This is the incredible story of Solon's revolution.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in Athens, around 600 BC, and things are bad. I mean, really bad. The gap between the super-rich aristocrats and the desperately poor was so huge that a violent revolution felt like it could kick off at any second. Farmers were losing their land, and even worse, they were being sold into slavery just to pay off their debts. The whole city was a powder keg, just waiting for a spark.
You know, what's really interesting about the story of Athens is that it wasn't the work of one single hero. The source material frames it perfectly as a relay race, this massive, multi-generational project. And Solon? He was the crucial first runner. Now, he didn't finish the race himself, not by a long shot. But without him, it never could have even started. He passed the baton to the next generation, who would eventually take Athens into its famous Golden Age. All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to look at the crisis that almost destroyed Athens. Then we'll dive into Solon's radical economic first aid, explore the political genius of his great compromise, and then see how he re-engineered the very idea of power, creating a blueprint for society that, believe it or not, still shapes our world today. So, with the city right on the edge of chaos, everyone turned to one man for a solution: Solon. Now, he wasn't from the super-rich elite. He came from more of a middle-class background, with some noble roots, sure, but he wasn't part of the ruling clique, and he had this amazing reputation for fairness. So, in 594 BC, the people of Athens elected him as their chief magistrate and basically gave him total authority to rewrite the rules and pull them back from the brink. No pressure, right?
Solon knew he couldn't waste a single second. The most immediate threat, the thing that was literally tearing families apart, was the debt crisis. So his first move wasn't some subtle long-term political strategy. Nope, it was emergency economic first aid, designed to stop the bleeding right then and there. He gave his first big decree an incredible name, the Sesaktheia. It literally translates to the shaking off of burdens, and the name just says it all, doesn't it? This wasn't a tweak, it was a massive, dramatic move meant to physically lift the crushing weight of debt off the people's shoulders and save the state from total collapse.
So what did this shaking off actually do? Well, it was a three-pronged attack. First, he canceled all debts, public and private, just gone, poof. Second, he banned debt slavery forever and even used state money to buy back citizens who'd been sold to other countries. And third, he devalued the currency itself. This was an absolutely potent economic cocktail.
And he did not mess around. He devalued the Athenian drachma by 27%. Overnight. Can you imagine that today? This was pure economic shock therapy. It instantly made future debts easier to pay off, and, as a bonus, it gave a huge boost to Athenian exports like olive oil, helping a whole new class of merchants get on their feet.
But as you can probably guess, this whole debt cancellation thing wasn't exactly popular with everyone. The wealthy creditors were absolutely furious. So why did Solon do it this way? Why not go further, or not as far? Well, this gets us to the real genius behind his moves, the wisdom of compromise. See, Solon was walking this incredible political tightrope. The poor, they didn't just want their debts gone, they wanted the aristocrats' land totally redistributed. The rich, of course, wanted to keep everything just the way it was. Solon gave neither side what they wanted. The poor got freedom from debt and slavery, a huge win, but the wealthy got to keep their land. Both sides grumbled, but both sides got something vital. And crucially, civil war was avoided.
And this idea is captured perfectly in this analogy from the source. Solon understood this deep political truth. If you try to fix a problem caused by one extreme by just jumping to the opposite extreme, you often just create a new disaster. He chose moderation over a bloody revolution, making sure the state could get back on its feet without stumbling into an even worse crisis.
But Solon was smart. He knew that all these economic fixes were, at the end of the day, just a bandage. He had treated the symptoms, the debt, the anger, but he hadn't actually cured the underlying disease of Athenian society. To do that, he had to go way, way deeper. So he asked himself a really fundamental question. Was the problem just about who had the money, or was it about the entire political system that allowed a tiny group of nobles to hoard all the power and wealth in the first place? He came to a powerful conclusion. The system itself was broken.
And his solution was nothing short of revolutionary. He completely changed what it meant to have power in Athens. Before Solon, everything depended on your bloodline. If you were born into the right family, you had power. If not, too bad. Solon threw that entire system out and replaced it with a brand new standard: wealth. From now on, your rights and your status were tied to your income.
And this was a total game changer. For the very first time, this created a real path for social mobility. It meant that you could be born poor, but through hard work, through trade or farming or being a good craftsman, you could actually earn wealth, move up through the new social classes, and gain real political power. It gave ordinary people something they never, ever had before: hope.
Okay, but if you're going to build a new system based on wealth instead of birth, you need a new set of rules to go with it. You need a whole new instruction manual. So Solon got to work drafting an entirely new blueprint for Athenian society, basically re-engineering it from the ground up.
He started by getting rid of the crazy harsh laws of his predecessor, Draco, the ones we still call draconian. Then he set up a jury system where any citizen could serve, which was huge. He created the right to make a will, a cornerstone of protecting private property. And he linked military duties to wealth. The richer you were, the more you had to contribute to the defense of the city. It all made sense.
But maybe his most brilliant creation was the Council of 400. See, before Solon, the nobles basically controlled everything the main citizen assembly was even allowed to talk about. This new council, with representatives from all the different tribes, would now prepare the agenda. For the first time ever, common citizens had a real voice in setting the entire political conversation.
Now, does this setup start to sound a little familiar? You got the new, more populist Council of 400, which is kind of like a modern House of Commons or House of Representatives. And then you have the old aristocratic council, the Areopagus, acting like a House of Lords or a Senate. By balancing these two, Solon basically invented the bicameral legislature, the two-house system used by countless democracies all over the world today. It's just incredible. So let's bring it all home. Why does some reformer from 2,600 years ago still matter to us? Because the blueprint he drew up didn't just save Athens. It's almost unbelievable, but so many of his core ideas are still the bedrock of modern societies today.
Just think about it for a second. The idea that you should be judged by a jury of your peers, the idea that law should be debated in two different houses of a legislature, the very concept of a written constitution, the right to private property through a will. These aren't new inventions. They are fundamental pillars of Western law and democracy, and they all trace their roots right back to Solon.
Solon's reforms were the foundation. They were that indispensable first leg in the long relay race to democracy. He stabilized the city and created the framework for something completely new. But, and this is key, he didn't create a full democracy. That enormous task was left for others. Which leaves us with one final tantalizing question. Who would be the next person to pick up that baton and run?